The Galactic Council had made a grave mistake. They thought humanity feared war. But what they didn't understand would soon shake the galaxy to its core. The Council's chambers were filled with the hum of alien voices, a cacophony of various species, all united in their common goal, to observe and understand the civilizations of the galaxy. Most of these species had been around for millennia, with peace established long ago. For them, war had become a distant memory, a relic of their past. And when they looked at humanity, they saw a species consumed by the idea of conflict. Humans are obsessed with war, said Counselor Rask, an ancient being from the distant star system of Xantar. His voice echoed through the council chambers, rich with the wisdom of ages. They've fought countless battles, and yet they continue to create more. It's their nature. They fear nothing but war itself. The rest of the council nodded in agreement, their expressions filled with disdain for the humans they had been observing for decades. To them, it was clear, humanity's greatest weakness was its tendency toward self-destruction, an ever-present fear of war. At the center of the chamber sat David, a human diplomat chosen to represent his species in front of the Galactic Council. He was no one special, just an ordinary man, but his role was anything but ordinary. He had been thrust into this position because of his ability to understand both the humanity he was sworn to protect and the vastly different perspectives of the Council's alien members. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Rask continued. If the humans could be freed from their war-driven fears, we might be able to help them. Maybe even guide them toward peace. David clenched his fists, knowing the truth about humanity, something the Council couldn't possibly understand. Humanity wasn't afraid of war. They had been through too much to fear something so outward and obvious. No, humanity feared something far more devastating. Something that had the potential to unravel everything they had fought for. Suddenly, the room fell silent. All eyes turned to David. Rask's voice broke the silence. What do you think, human? Is this truly the nature of your species? Are you so afraid of war that you would risk everything for peace? David took a deep breath, his heart racing. He could feel the weight of all the eyes upon him, the weight of his species' future on his shoulders. For years, he had been asked to represent humanity, to speak for its virtues, its mistakes, its potential. But there was something about this question, about the way they saw humanity, that made him feel like a stranger in his own skin. No, he said, his voice steady but heavy with truth. You're wrong. A ripple of surprise spread through the room. The council members exchanged confused glances. Rask leaned forward. What do you mean, human? David's eyes narrowed. He knew what he was about to say would change everything, but it had to be said. Humanity doesn't fear war, he repeated, his tone firm. We've fought countless battles, survived the worst we could imagine. But there's something else we fear far more. It's something you've overlooked entirely. The room was still, the council hanging on his every word. David looked around, his gaze meeting the eyes of the council members one by one. They were waiting for him to explain, to give them an answer they could understand. But he knew it wasn't something that could be easily explained. It wasn't something they could just grasp in a single conversation. But it had to start somewhere. It's not the wars we fear, he said softly, but with a gravity that shook the room. It's the loss of what makes us human. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, David saw a flicker of uncertainty in the eyes of the council. They had expected to hear about war, about bloodshed, about fear driven by the tangible dangers of battle. But instead, they were faced with something far deeper, something more abstract, yet far more profound. David continued, humans fear the destruction of connection. We fear losing each other, our families, our friends, our ability to care for one another. We fear being alone, abandoned in a universe where no one sees us. That fear, that emptiness, it's what drives us more than anything else. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They didn't know how to process this revelation, didn't know how to respond. They had been prepared to deal with a species that was consumed by the idea of war. But this was something entirely different. Rask's voice trembled slightly. But that's not a fear we've ever known. We've learned to live without attachments, without the weight of such emotional bonds. David's heart sank. And that's why you'll never understand what drives humanity. You've never known what it's like to fear the loss of everything that makes you feel alive. You've never known what it's like to wake up every day not knowing if today will be the last day you can hold your loved ones close. The room was silent now. For the first time, the council realized that the true strength of humanity wasn't in their fear of war, it was in their ability to love, to care, and to fight for what they held dear, no matter the cost. David stood up, his mind racing with the weight of his words. He had just revealed something so intimate, so human, that it felt like he had opened up a part of himself to the entire galaxy. The council sat frozen, their minds grappling with what they had just learned. David took a step toward the door, his voice low but filled with conviction. I came here to represent humanity, to show you what makes us who we are. I didn't come to talk about war, because we don't fear that. But I hope you've learned what we truly fear. And with that, he left the room, leaving the council to grapple with the truth about humanity's greatest weakness, and the strength that came with it. David walked down the cold, metallic hallway of the Galactic Council's headquarters, his mind racing. The truth he had just laid bare hung heavy in the air, and for the first time, he questioned whether he had made the right decision. Had he just revealed humanity's greatest vulnerability to a galaxy that might not understand it? But deep down, he knew it had been necessary. The Council had never truly understood humans. They had looked at wars, at violence, at conflict, and they believed those were the things that defined humanity. They were wrong. It wasn't the wars that made humans strong, it was their love, their connections, their willingness to fight to protect the bonds that held them together. As he passed through the dim-lit corridors, his thoughts were interrupted by a soft, almost imperceptible buzz in his earpiece. It was a message from Earth. He paused, glancing around to ensure no one was watching, and activated the communication link. David, a familiar voice crackled through the device. It was his wife, Clara. Clara, is everything okay? David's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't heard from her in hours, and his worry began to spike. It's Sarah, Clara's voice trembled. She's missing. His stomach dropped. Sarah was their daughter, their only child. She was everything to them, and the thought of her in danger sent a rush of panic through David's chest. What do you mean missing? David asked, his voice suddenly strained with concern. They found her backpack by the old park, but no sign of her anywhere. I don't know what happened. David, I'm scared. David's pulse quickened. He could hear the fear in Clara's voice, and it terrified him more than any battle he had ever fought. This was different. This was personal. I'm coming home, Clara, he said, cutting the transmission before she could respond. He didn't need to hear more. His world had just turned upside down. David's mind was filled with worry as he rushed to the transport hangar. The Galactic Council meeting was over, but this was no time for diplomacy. He needed to be with his family. He needed to find Sarah. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, the atmosphere was thick with unease. The Council had spent hours discussing David's revelation, and what was supposed to be a peaceful dialogue had turned into something far more complicated. The human diplomat had planted a seed of doubt in their minds, a doubt that questioned their very understanding of the species they had so casually observed. Rask sat at the head of the table, his ancient eyes narrowed in thought. He had never known fear the way humans did, but now, for the first time, he felt an unfamiliar weight on his shoulders. David's words had struck a chord, one that resonated deeply in his own memory, and for a brief moment, Rask wondered whether his own people had made a similar mistake in their distant past. Counselor Rither, a being of shadow and energy, leaned forward. We must learn more. This fear of connection, of loss, it could be their true power. Perhaps it is not war that drives them, but something more insidious. Rask looked at Rither, the realization dawning on him. Yes, they are not driven by the fear of war, they are driven by the fear of losing everything. And if we don't understand that, we will never understand them. The council grew silent, their thoughts focused on the implications of what David had said. Rask knew that this revelation had changed everything. Humanity, it seemed, was not simply a war-driven species. They were a species bound together by a force more powerful than any weapon, love, connection, and the fear of losing those they held dear. We must be careful, Rask finally spoke, his voice filled with a deep, uneasy wisdom. We could never predict what such a fear would drive them to do. If they believe their loved ones are in danger, there is no force in the galaxy that could stop them from fighting to protect them. Meanwhile, David stood before the transport vessel, anxiously awaiting clearance to leave. His heart was heavy with the weight of his responsibilities. As the vessel prepared to launch, he sent one last message to Clara, assuring her he was on his way. But even as he set course for Earth, something in the back of his mind gnawed at him. Something felt off. The sudden disappearance of Sarah, it didn't sit right with him. There had been no warning, no sign that anything was wrong. The police had already begun their search, but David knew they would need his help. He couldn't wait for the authorities to catch up. He would find Sarah himself if he had to. The vessel accelerated, and the stars outside began to blur into streaks of light. But David couldn't focus on the beauty of the cosmos. His mind kept replaying Clara's voice, filled with desperation. He didn't know who or what had taken his daughter, but he knew one thing for sure, they would regret it. Back on Earth, Clara paced frantically through their home, trying to make sense of the situation. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She had always been a calm and collected woman, but the thought of losing Sarah was more than she could bear. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke her from her thoughts. She hesitated, her breath caught in her throat, before she opened it. Standing in the doorway was Officer Jenkins, his expression grim. "We found something," he said, holding out a small, metallic device. "We found this near where Sarah's backpack was. It's unlike anything we've ever seen before." Clara's heart raced as she took the device, examining it closely. It was small, smooth, and glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. The markings on it were unfamiliar, alien even. "What is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We don't know," Jenkins replied. "But it doesn't belong here. And I'm afraid it might have something to do with Sarah's disappearance." Clara's hands shook as she held the device. Her worst fears were beginning to take shape. This wasn't just a missing child case. This was something far more sinister. And as she stood there, clutching the strange device, she realized one terrifying truth: they weren't alone. David's transport sped through the vast expanse of space, the quiet hum of the engines doing little to soothe his rising anxiety. Earth was still a few hours away, but the feeling of helplessness gnawed at him, knowing Clara was alone and terrified. The image of Sarah's empty room, the backpack discarded in the park, haunted him. This wasn't some random disappearance, it was part of something larger, something David couldn't yet understand. As the vessel entered the atmosphere of Earth, David's thoughts kept returning to that mysterious device Clara had found. The strange, glowing object was clearly not of this world. His mind raced with possibilities. Was it alien technology? And if so, what had it to do with Sarah? Had someone, something, taken her? The vessel touched down at the military base just outside the city. David didn't wait for the standard checks. He bolted from the ship, sprinting toward the transport car that would take him home. His only thoughts were of Clara and Sarah, and the dread that filled his chest with each passing second. As he pulled up to his house, he saw Clara standing by the front door, holding the alien device. Her eyes were red, and the worry etched across her face was deep. She had been trying to hold it together for Sarah's sake, but David knew it was taking a toll on her. Clara's voice was barely a whisper when she spoke. "David, what is this thing?" David walked up to her, his eyes immediately drawn to the device in her trembling hands. He had no answers, but the sight of it stirred a deep, primal fear in him. "I don't know," he said, his voice low. "But I'm going to find out." Clara handed him the device, and as soon as his fingers brushed against it, a strange sensation washed over him. A flash of images, alien landscapes, strange ships, beings with cold eyes, flooded his mind, overwhelming him with vivid, surreal visions. David staggered back, his heart racing. He could barely make sense of what he had seen, but one thing was certain: this was no ordinary piece of technology. And it was connected to Sarah's disappearance. Just then, a soft knock on the door broke the tension. David turned to Clara, his pulse quickening. "Who could that be?" he asked, instinctively stepping in front of her. Clara opened the door, revealing Officer Jenkins, who stood with a stern expression. Behind him, 2 military personnel were waiting. "We need to talk," Jenkins said, his voice grave. "We've discovered something you need to see." David stepped aside, allowing them in, but his mind was already racing with the possibilities. What else could they have found? Inside the house, Jenkins wasted no time. "We've run a preliminary analysis on the device," he said, pulling out a small scanner from his bag. He waved it over the object, and the screen flickered with data. "It's not from any known human source. But that's not the most disturbing part." "Share." "You said. Galactic Council thought humans feared war, until this happened." Instructions. 1 Objective. Generate a new YouTube video title that mirrors the core meaning and dramatic twist of the existing title. The new title should be tailored for an emotional stories channel and optimized for SEO. 2 Requirements. The title must be less than 70 words. It should evoke strong curiosity and emotional impact. Retain the narrative twist and essence of the original title. Use simple, clear language to connect with an older audience, 60+ males. Ensure the title is SEO-friendly and is likely to score 90+ on tools like AMI, vidIQ, and TubeBuddy. 3 Tone and style. Use an engaging, suspenseful tone that invites viewers to learn more. The title should read naturally and feel human-written. Incorporate a sense of irony or unexpected twist that reflects the original title's nature. 4 Output example. Do not provide an example unless specifically asked. The tool should generate an original title based on the criteria above. Final instruction. Using the above guidelines, generate a new video title that captures the same dramatic twist and essence as Galactic Council thought humans feared war, until this happened, while being SEO optimized for an emotional stories YouTube channel. ChatGPT said. Galactic Council's shocking discovery: humans aren't afraid of war, but of this. You said. Title. Galactic Council's shocking discovery: humans aren't afraid of war, but of this. Create a 7-part HFY sci-fi story in third-person style, focusing on a captivating narrative with powerful twists, suspense, and a heartwarming or motivational conclusion. The story should start with an intriguing hook within the first 30 seconds to grab attention and keep the audience curious, ensuring they feel like they will miss something crucial if they skip the video. Use simple and natural English, with straightforward, relatable character names. Each part should be exciting, filled with emotional highs and lows, ensuring that the audience feels connected to the characters and their journey. The characters should face challenges that highlight humanity's strengths and resilience in the face of adversity. In Part 1, aim for 1,500 words that include a strong, curiosity-driven intro. The story should be straightforward but gripping, building up to an unexpected twist by the end of the first part. Every part should push the narrative forward, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats and eager for more. In the final part, end with a meaningful life lesson that resonates with your audience, especially those aged 60+, while leaving them inspired. David's mind raced as the visions flooded his consciousness. He saw flashes of his childhood, his first meeting with Clara, the day Sarah was born, and every milestone in their lives, but something was off. These memories weren't just his own. They were Sarah's memories too. He staggered back from the object, his heart racing as he tried to make sense of the impossible. How could this alien device be connected to his daughter in such a profound way? The memories felt real, yet they also felt manipulated, twisted somehow. David, Clara's voice broke through his confusion. What's happening? What do you see? He turned to her, his face pale. It's showing me our memories, Clara. Sarah's memories, but they're not just hers. It's like this thing, it's alive inside of us. It's been with us all along. Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. What do you mean? How is that even possible? I don't know, David admitted, shaking his head. But I can feel it. This device, this signal, it's connected to us, to everything we've been through. It's like we're part of something bigger. Something we never knew existed. Just then, Jenkins stepped forward, his face grim. David, Clara, there's something you need to know. We've been digging into the signal source, and it's not just a random location. It's not even of human origin. David's stomach churned. What does that mean? It means, Jenkins said, his voice low, that the device is a key. A key to a portal, and that portal leads to another world. Another dimension, even. David's pulse quickened. Another world? You're saying this device can open a door to another place? Jenkins nodded. Exactly. And I'm afraid it's not just any place. It's a place where humanity's future is being decided. Right now, as we speak. David's world tilted on its axis. His thoughts raced back to the alien landscapes he had glimpsed, the cold eyes, the ships. This was bigger than just Sarah. This was about the future of Earth. Wait, Clara said, her voice trembling. Are you saying Sarah was taken to this other place? Jenkins met her gaze, his expression unreadable. We don't know yet. But we believe the signal is trying to lead us there, to the portal. If Sarah is alive, she may be waiting for us. David's hands clenched into fists, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. He had always thought of himself as an ordinary man, someone who lived an average life. But now? Now, everything had changed. His daughter was caught in something far beyond his comprehension, and there was no turning back. Without another word, David grabbed the device, determined to find out everything he could. His mind was already calculating the risks. Going through this portal, confronting whatever lay on the other side, it was a gamble. But he had no choice. His daughter needed him. And if this was the only way to save her, then he would face it head-on. The group made their way to the designated location, an old, abandoned military complex hidden deep in the woods. The air felt charged, almost electric, as they approached the large metal doors that concealed the portal. There was no turning back now. David felt Clara's hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. He turned to her, his voice soft. We're going to get her back. No matter what happens. I believe that, Clara replied, her eyes filled with determination. We're in this together. With that, they stepped into the darkened facility. The walls were lined with strange symbols, similar to those on the device. It was clear now that this wasn't just some random location, it was a place that had been preparing for something, for a long time. Jenkins led the way, pulling out a small handheld device that flickered with readings. We're close, he said, his voice tense. The signal is getting stronger. As they descended deeper into the complex, they came to a large chamber. In the center was a massive, glowing portal, shimmering with an otherworldly energy. The air around it hummed, and the temperature dropped dramatically. "This is it," Jenkins said. "This is the portal. The device will activate it." David stepped forward, the alien object still in his hand. He felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing him closer to the portal. His heart raced. There was no going back. "Clara, stay close," David warned, his voice tight with fear. "I don't know what will happen once we activate this thing." Clara nodded, her hand slipping into his. She wasn't about to let go, not now, not ever. David placed the device near the portal, and as soon as it made contact with the energy field, the room around them seemed to dissolve. The air crackled with power, and the portal expanded, revealing a vast, swirling vortex of light and energy. Before they could react, a voice echoed through the chamber, booming and incomprehensible. It was the voice of something ancient, something powerful. David's heart skipped a beat as the voice spoke again, this time in perfect English. "Welcome, Earthlings. You have come to face your destiny. Will you join us, or will you fall?" The ground beneath them shook violently, and a deep rumble filled the air. The portal was not just a doorway, it was a test. And they had no idea what lay beyond it. The energy from the portal surged violently, sending a jolt through David's body as he steadied himself against the shockwave. His grip tightened on Clara's hand, and her eyes met his, full of both fear and determination. "David," she whispered, barely audible over the hum of the portal. "What do we do now?" David's mind raced. The words of the voice that had spoken to them echoed in his thoughts. "Will you join us, or will you fall?" The question seemed to hang in the air, a challenge, a threat. They had no choice but to move forward. The fate of their daughter, and perhaps the entire world, was at stake. "We move forward," he said, his voice steady. "We don't have any other option." With one last look at Jenkins, who was still staring at the portal with a mixture of awe and apprehension, David stepped into the swirling vortex. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, everything around them seemed to twist and distort. The room they had been standing in vanished, replaced by a sea of light that felt both disorienting and overwhelming. Clara gasped, her voice lost in the chaos, but David could still feel her hand gripping his. He didn't know how long they had been falling, if they were falling at all, but soon, the swirling lights began to calm, and the world around them stabilized. They found themselves in an entirely different place. It was vast and alien, unlike anything David had ever imagined. The sky was a deep shade of violet, with strange constellations that blinked in and out of existence. Towering structures stretched into the heavens, made from materials that shimmered like liquid metal. The air was thin, almost ethereal, and it carried a strange fragrance that David couldn't quite place. Jenkins and the others stumbled through the portal after them, taking in the scene with wide eyes. They were no longer on Earth. The place they had arrived in was something entirely foreign, something not meant for human eyes. "What is this place?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. David scanned their surroundings. There was no sign of life, but the sheer scale of the place made it feel like they were not alone. The silence was deafening, as if the world itself was holding its breath. This is beyond anything we could have imagined," Jenkins murmured, his tone filled with both awe and fear. "This is a world on the edge of the universe. This is where the Council meets." David's blood ran cold. "The Council?" "The Galactic Council," Jenkins explained, glancing around nervously. "They govern the fate of planets, civilizations, all of existence. They've been watching us for a long time, David. And I think they've finally decided we're ready." David's head spun. He had heard whispers of a galactic organization in the brief moments when the alien technology had shown him glimpses of their past, but the reality of it was far more staggering. The fate of Earth, of all humankind, was no longer in their hands alone. "We have to find Sarah," Clara said, her voice breaking through David's spiraling thoughts. David turned to her, nodding. "We will. But first, we need to understand where we are and what we're up against." A low hum filled the air, and before they could move, a large, circular platform appeared from beneath their feet. It rose slowly, seemingly out of nowhere, until it hovered a few feet above the ground. The group stepped onto it, uncertain of its purpose. Suddenly, a figure materialized in front of them, a tall, imposing being with translucent skin that shimmered in the purple light. It had no discernible face, but its presence was overwhelming. It exuded authority, as if it was the very embodiment of power. "You have arrived," the figure intoned, its voice resonating through David's bones. "You are the chosen humans. The ones who will determine the fate of your world." David's heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. Everything had led to this. "We're here to find our daughter," Clara said, her voice firm, though David could hear the tremor beneath it. "Where is she?" The figure did not respond immediately. Instead, it tilted its head, studying them with an inscrutable gaze. Then, it spoke again, its voice carrying a weight that seemed to reverberate through the very air. "Your daughter is at the heart of what is to come. But the question is not where she is. The question is whether you will choose to save her, or to sacrifice her for the survival of your species." David's mind reeled. Sacrifice Sarah? The very thought was unthinkable. "What are you talking about?" David demanded, stepping forward. "We're not here for some kind of bargain. We're here to bring her back." The figure's form shifted, a wave of energy flowing through its body. "The choice is yours. The fate of your daughter, of your world, is tied to a far greater decision than you understand. The Council has been observing your kind for centuries. And now, we will judge you. Your world's survival depends on the decision you make in the coming moments." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "What decision? What do you want from us?" The figure raised its hand, and suddenly, the sky above them darkened. The ground trembled, and a massive structure rose from the center of the platform, an enormous pyramid that loomed over them, casting a shadow across the entire world. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a monument to the Council's power. "You will choose," the figure intoned. "You will either join the galactic community, offering your species potential for greater power and survival, or you will be cast aside, forgotten by the stars." David stood frozen, his mind reeling. There was no going back now. This was the test, the moment that would determine whether Earth would survive, or fall into oblivion. But in his heart, David knew one thing above all else: no matter what it took, he would save Sarah. The platform began to descend slowly, and David's heart hammered in his chest. Every word spoken by the towering figure sent a chill down his spine, and he struggled to understand the magnitude of what he was being asked to do. The world around them felt as though it was holding its breath. The immense pyramid that loomed over them was both a symbol of unfathomable power and an ominous warning. The choice they had to make was not just about Sarah, not just about Earth, it was about everything. Everything they knew, everything they had fought for, could be lost in the blink of an eye if they made the wrong decision. Clara's voice broke through his thoughts. "David, we have to make a choice. We can't just stand here forever." He turned to her, his mind still racing. "How can we choose? They're asking us to give up everything. Our humanity, our world, for what?" "For survival," Clara said softly, but there was a quiet resolve in her voice. "Maybe we have to think beyond just us. Maybe this is bigger than our family, bigger than our planet." The weight of her words hit David like a physical blow. Could they really risk everything for the sake of the greater good? Could he sacrifice his daughter for something as abstract as survival? David, Clara continued, her voice trembling slightly. I've been thinking about what the figure said, about whether we'll choose to save Sarah or to sacrifice her for the survival of our species. Maybe the question isn't just whether we'll sacrifice her. Maybe the real question is whether humanity deserves to survive. If we can't make the hard choices now, then maybe we're not ready for what's coming. David stared at her, his mind reeling. Clara's words were true. Humanity had always fought wars, always been driven by greed, fear, and power. Could they really be worthy of a place in the stars? Or were they destined to destroy themselves, like so many civilizations before them? Perhaps this is what they want to test, Jenkins interjected, his voice quiet but firm. They're not just testing whether you'll save your daughter. They're testing whether humanity can rise above its flaws, its selfishness, its fear, its hate. David looked up at the figure, still standing tall before them, seemingly waiting for their decision. The figure's form shifted again, its energy pulsing with an intensity that filled the air with a pressure so thick it was almost suffocating. You have one choice, one moment, the figure intoned. Save your world. Save your people. But to do so, you must make the ultimate sacrifice. You will choose whether to join us and become part of something far greater, or reject it and risk everything. David's mind was clouded with doubt. His love for Sarah, his desire to save her above all else, fought with the undeniable truth that humanity had come to a crossroads. If they did not evolve, if they did not learn to work together, to put the good of the whole above the individual, they would fail. We're not ready, David whispered. We've never been ready. We've fought wars, destroyed our planet, and now we're supposed to join this council. The figure seemed to sense his hesitation. You have been given power. The choice is yours. Do not let it slip away. Clara's eyes met David's, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. Maybe we don't have to choose between saving her and saving everyone. Maybe the answer is to find a way to save both. David's heart swelled. Maybe Clara was right. Maybe they didn't have to sacrifice one for the other. Maybe there was a way to fight, to change the outcome, and still save Sarah. But the path ahead was unclear, and the risk was overwhelming. The figure had given them a single chance, a single opportunity to prove humanity's worth. I don't know what we're supposed to do, David said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. But I do know this, we can't give up. Not now. Not when we're so close. The figure seemed to sense his resolve. Very well, it said, its voice resonating with approval. You have made your decision. You will face the consequences of your actions. Proceed. The ground beneath their feet shifted again, and suddenly, the pyramid before them opened, revealing a dark, swirling abyss. A portal, dark and foreboding, waited at the center. Go, the figure commanded, motioning toward the abyss. Your journey has only just begun. David stepped forward without hesitation. He didn't know what lay beyond that portal, but he knew one thing for certain, he would not let fear, doubt, or uncertainty stop him. Not now. Not ever. Clara followed him, her hand still tightly gripping his. Jenkins and the others came behind them, stepping into the unknown together. The portal engulfed them, and they were swallowed whole by the darkness. The darkness faded, replaced by a blinding light that caused David to squint. As the light subsided, he found himself standing in a massive, circular chamber, its walls lined with glowing symbols and intricate patterns. It was as though they had entered the heart of a machine, a place beyond time and space. And there, standing in the center of the room, was Sarah. She was not alone. Surrounding her were strange figures, beings of light and energy, their forms shifting and pulsing with an intensity David could barely comprehend. The chamber hummed with power, and David felt a sense of awe and terror wash over him. "Sarah," Clara whispered, taking a step forward. Sarah's eyes met theirs, and for a moment, David felt his heart stop. There was something different about her, something beyond the familiar warmth and innocence he had once known. She seemed changed. "Dad, Mom," Sarah said, her voice soft yet filled with a strange authority. "I'm not the same person you knew. I've been shown what comes next." The beings around her pulsed with energy, and David's mind raced. What had happened to her? Was this the test? Had she been part of it all along? "You've passed the test," one of the beings said, its voice like the wind. "Humanity has been given a choice, to change, to evolve, to join the galactic community. You will no longer be the same. You will have a place among the stars." David's mind reeled. The sacrifice, the choice, it had all led here. Humanity had made it. They had risen above their flaws and their fears. And now, they were ready. But in the end, it was not just the fate of Earth that had changed. It was David's understanding of humanity's potential. They had survived, not because they had chosen to sacrifice, but because they had chosen to evolve together, to rise as one. And in that moment, David knew one thing for certain: the future was in their hands. It was up to them to shape it. Conclusion. The story comes full circle as David and his family confront the ultimate decision, the balance between personal sacrifice and collective survival. The final twist reveals that humanity's true strength lies not in individual choices, but in unity and the ability to evolve beyond past mistakes. David's journey, which began with the desperation to save his daughter, ultimately reveals that the path to salvation is one where every decision impacts the greater whole.